Despite being born and raised in a Maine town, Julia has never been in the woods before. And now, at the whim of her husband Sean, the woman was in the middle of dense thickets of fir, spruce, and pine. Julia had no idea how to behave in the forest, and therefore she was afraid of every rustle or crack of a dry branch under her feet. As if mocking the intruder, the squirrels jumped through the trees like red lightning. Hares didn't lag behind and made their intricate loops on the paths in order to get wolves and foxes off their trail. But there could have been much bigger animals here. And what should I do then? Julia thought anxiously and looked around instinctively. Sean lured her into the woods under the guise of taking a walk together, and then he deliberately left her alone in the wilderness. Such cruelty made Julia's eyes fill with tears and her heart ache treacherously. At first, the woman thought it was all some kind of a joke and that Sean would return for her. But then an hour had passed, and another one, but her husband was still nowhere to be seen. God, is this really Sean's gratitude for all the years I took care of him? Julia whispered, having difficulty trudging through the dense thickets. The young people had lived together for 5 years, all of which were very peaceful and happy. That was mainly due to the fact that Julia was a very calm person, who always preferred to cut sharp corners and smooth out any conflicts. When she met Sean, she was already a self-sufficient woman with a solid bank account and her own real estate company. It wasn't an inheritance from wealthy parents, but rather the result of her hard work. Everything Julia had, she achieved on her own. She was one of the first agents in her city to start selling real estate on the internet. She was an intermediary who connected the seller and the buyer, getting commission from successful transactions. Over time, Julia managed to open her own real estate agency, which made her even more successful. The handsome womanizer Sean quickly realized what benefits a marriage with such a wealthy woman would bring. Therefore, Sean clinged to her like a tick, doing everything in his power to charm the young woman from the first days of their acquaintance. Despite the fact that the man had no money, Julia treated him with care and understanding. The young woman happily agreed to have Sean move in with her, letting him give up his room at a cheap motel. After the young people got married, Julia resigned herself to the fact that the newly made husband never got a job and spent most of his time sitting in front of the TV with a can of beer and a bag of chips in his hands. And now, as a reward for her love and acceptance, Julia found herself alone in the middle of a dense forest, hostile to uninvited guests. Moreover, Sean left his wife at the most difficult moment in her life, when she was sick and needed his help and support the most. The unfortunate woman couldn't comprehend how her husband could be so cruel. She found out that she was seriously ill 3 months ago. She was feeling sicker by the day, so she decided to get a checkup to see what was wrong. It was then that it turned out that the woman had cancer. Lowering her eyes, the oncologist told the bewildered Julia that she only had about 1 year left to live. However, the doctor added, "This isn't a death sentence, Miss Taylor. There's treatment, and if you start it right away, there's a good chance you could beat this thing." Thanks to the advances in modern medicine, we've managed to increase the recovery rate by several times. The treatment is expensive, but I think that no amount of money could be more important than health. No, you're right. I have to fight for my life and get treatment, no matter what it costs me, Julia answered, who was glad to get her hopes back up. A minute ago, she felt broken, and now she saw the light at the end of the tunnel. And when the woman left the hospital and told Sean about the treatment option, her husband didn't seem all that supportive. All these doctors are just scammers. They just want to get money out of you, but it will end the same way, in a graveyard. The man grunted angrily, clenching his fists. But that's my life we're talking about. And it's not like I don't have the money. There should be enough money in my bank account. And if it isn't enough, then we can sell the agency. Julia objected. Sean only pursed his lips in response. He clearly had a different take on the matter. And then the man came up with the cunning plan regarding Julia's future and her money. After that memorable conversation at the hospital entrance, Sean suddenly became very complacent and agreed with his wife in everything. The woman couldn't be happier about such changes in her husband's attitude. Therefore, when Sean offered to take Julia on a walk in the fresh air, she didn't get suspicious. Sean deliberately took the woman into the very depths of the forest and literally pushed her out of the Chevrolet. "What are you doing, honey?" Julia exclaimed, trying to hold on to the car door. But Sean didn't give up, and having hit the gas, rushed towards the city. Exhausted by her illness and stress, the woman wandered through the woods, having no idea where she was going. Julia didn't know how much time had passed since her husband got rid of her in such a cruel way. The woman was tormented by hunger and thirst, which only aggravated her already difficult situation. It would probably be easier if wild animals tore me to pieces, Julia thought, and started to sob loudly without hiding. Sitting under a tree, Julia didn't even realize when she dozed off, and only came to her senses when she heard a rude male voice say, "And how long are you going to just sit here for, ma'am?" The woman opened her eyes and saw a tall man dressed in a khaki suit standing in front of her. A little further away, there was a huge dog, curiously looking at the owner's strange discovery. The man had a long beard and a gun hanging off his shoulder. He's probably a hunter, but what does he want from me? Why can't he just keep on walking? Thought Julia, who had already resigned to her fate and was preparing to die. To her great surprise, the man with the dog didn't seem to be planning on leaving anytime soon. Instead, the hunter began to quickly collect dry brushwood, apparently intending to build a fire. When the man succeeded, he took out a pot from his hiking backpack and, having filled it with water from a bottle, put it on the fire. Then the hunter added mushrooms to it and poured in a can of beans with meat. The intoxicating smell of food immediately filled the air around them, causing Julia's stomach to growl from hunger. The stranger smiled understandingly and stirred the contents of the pot with a spoon. Soon, Julia was already devouring the hot delicacy offered by the nice hunter. Having satisfied her hunger, the woman felt tired, which caused her eyes to close on their own. Through her dream, Julia felt the man pick her up and carry her somewhere. The unfortunate woman tried to resist, but then she lost consciousness. Julia woke up the next morning, having slept for over 12 hours. Looking around with surprise, the woman saw that she was in a small, clean room that smelled of pine needles and some herbs. Julia tried to get out of the bed, but her weakness prevented her from doing so. At that moment, the door opened and a frail old woman entered the room. "Are you finally awake, honey? That's good news. Now let me give you this healing decoction. You'll feel better right away. My name is Dolores Watson," said the stranger and handed Julia the mug with a tart, fragrant liquid. The woman smiled shyly and accepted the healing drink from the hands of the old woman. Mrs. Watson turned out to be a sweet woman who treated patients with the help of alternative medicine. Terminally ill people often came to her for help, having exhausted all the options the traditional medicine had to offer. Mrs. Watson lived alone, and helping people suffering from various ailments became the meaning of her life. Living in a house in the middle of the forest, the woman helped everyone who turned to her. "What's the name of the man who saved me in the forest?" Julia asked, while taking a walk through the forest with the old woman. "Oh, that was Liam. He's a nice man, a widower. He lost his wife and daughter in a car accident. Now he lives as a hermit. He did the right thing bringing you to me. I can help you. I can feel it. Don't believe what the doctors told you. You'll be fine," Mrs. Watson said. "Thank you. I'm so grateful to you," Julia answered, brushing away a tear. "Don't even mention it, dear. It's not me you need to thank, but Liam. If it weren't for him, you would have died a long time ago," the woman answered, touching her companion's hand. Julia lived in the house of Dolores Watson for about 3 months, during which she developed a strong bond with the old woman. Liam also didn't forget about Julia and came to visit her every day. Apparently, Liam grew to like the woman he saved, and the feeling was mutual. Julia also liked this tall, calm man who exuded confidence. The young people didn't even realize when it happened, but at one point, they just knew that they wanted to be together. So they started dating and spending most of their time together. However, the most surprising part was that after the old woman's treatment, Julia felt as if there was no illness at all. Actually, Julia had made up her mind a long time ago. She didn't want to leave the old woman's forest house and break off the relationship with Liam, as she developed rather strong feelings for him. But on the other hand, the woman wanted to deal with Sean, who was so cruel to her. So, Julia returned to the city with Liam, but she was surprised to learn that Sean was already in custody. As it turned out, the cunning womanizer brought it on himself. He hired an actor that looked like Julia to help him withdraw money from Julia's bank account. The bank security team did a great job, and soon the terrified Sean was already testifying at the police station. Crying, the man claimed that he wasn't guilty of anything and just wanted to withdraw his wife's money from her account, as she wouldn't need it anymore. Sean also couldn't hide the fact that he got rid of his wife by leaving her to die in the deep forest. Unfortunately, the law enforcement officers failed to find Julia in the forest, so they considered her dead. So the woman's return to the city caused a real sensation. But it was the doctors at the hospital who were surprised the most. They ran some tests and concluded that Julia was completely healthy. Hugging Liam, Julia smiled mysteriously and said a mental thank you to the forest healer, Dolores Watson. After getting a divorce from Sean, who was convicted of attempted murder, Julia sold her house in the city and moved in with Mrs. Watson together with Liam. The young couple used the proceeds from the sale of the house to build a center for sick people who'd lost all hope for healing. Next to Liam and Dolores Watson, Julia felt happy for the first time in years. She knew that together they were doing a good deed, helping those who needed it most. By that time, she was already pregnant, so Julia and Liam were getting ready to become the best parents in the world for their firstborn. But Mrs. Watson seemed to be the happiest of them all. She couldn't wait for her house to be filled with the child's laughter.